My mother called to tell me to transfer my apartment to my brother so he could get married. I was lying in the emergency room at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle at the time. Left wrist fracture. I'd driven into a barrier. The doctor said I was lucky it was a barrier and not a tree, otherwise it would have been more than just a broken bone. I lay on the gurney staring up at the two fluorescent ceiling fixtures. One was dead, a blackened tube just sitting there. The other one wasn't doing much better. It kept flickering on and off, making my eyes ache and my head throb. The painkillers were starting to kick in, leaving me groggy and floaty, but I still answered when my phone rang out of pure reflex. The screen said, "Mom." Her contact photo was a family portrait. Her, my dad, and my brother Kevin, all smiling in front of the new house they'd bought. I wasn't in that picture. They'd taken it on a day I was working overtime. "We'll add you in next time," they'd said. There was never a next time. "Emily, honey, I need to tell you something." Her voice came through the speaker in that tone I knew too well, the one that expected immediate compliance. "That apartment of yours, it's too big for just one girl anyway. Why don't you transfer it to your brother so he can get married? Jessica's pregnant, and they need a place urgently. You wouldn't want your brother to stay single forever, would you?" I stared at that dead fluorescent tube. Something thick and heavy lodged in my throat. The plaster cast on my left wrist felt hard and rough against my skin. "Okay," I said. "I'll take care of the paperwork once I'm discharged." My mother's voice brightened instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. "That's my girl.
I knew you'd understand."
Oh, and Kevin wants to open an auto repair shop. He's short about $5,000 for startup costs, so if you could." "Mom, I'm in the hospital." "The hospital? What happened?" "Car accident. Broken wrist."
Oh.
"Well, get some rest, okay? It's not serious, is it?" "Not serious." Good, good. So about that 5,000. "We'll talk when I get out." I hung up. The nurse came in to change my bag, took one look at my face, and asked if I needed someone to come stay with me. I shook my head and said no, I'd be fine. She swapped out the bag, checked my temperature, and paused at the door like she wanted to say something else. In the end, she just left without a word. The room went quiet again, save for that fluorescent light still flickering overhead.
Click, click, click.
Like a countdown timer. I closed my eyes, and the movie started playing in my head. The movie of everything. My name is Emily Harris. I'm 30 years old, and I work as a senior auditor at a mid-sized accounting firm in Seattle. Not a big firm, about 70 people total, but I've been there 7 years now, climbing up from intern to senior associate. I made senior last year. The money isn't spectacular, but it's enough for a single woman to live decently in this city. I own a small condo in the suburbs, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, with a little balcony. I drive a used Toyota Corolla, silver, with about 90,000 miles on it. None of this is remarkable by any standard. In any normal neighborhood in Seattle, it's just ordinary. But you'd think I was describing a mansion and a Mercedes, the way my family looked at it. Because in their eyes, nothing I owned ever really belonged to me. It was all family resources, and family resources had only one destination: my brother Kevin. I've known this my whole life. Kevin is 4 years younger than me. The day he was born, I was still in kindergarten. I remember my grandmother picking me up from school, her face split in a grin a mile wide. "Emily, you have a little brother now." I was too young to understand what little brother really meant.
I thought I was getting a playmate.
Someone to build blocks with and watch cartoons alongside. That's not what I got. Kevin was the center of the universe from the moment he came out. My mother quit her job to stay home with him, and I came home from school to wash diapers, warm bottles, and rock him to sleep. I was 5 years old. I had to stand on a step stool to reach the counter, but my mother said, "You're the big sister, be a good girl." So I was a very good girl, and I stretched up on my tiptoes to reach those pots and pans. When Kevin was 3, he wanted one of those little plastic cars kids sit on and push along with their feet. My mother bought it without a second thought. $69.99. I remember the price because that same month I'd asked for a box of 24 crayons, $9.99, and she said it was too expensive. I could make do with watercolors. When Kevin started first grade, my mother bought him a new SpongeBob backpack, puffy and stuffed to the brim. Mine was sewn from old fabric by my grandmother, faded floral print. My classmates asked why I didn't get a new one. I said, "My mom says this one still works." When Kevin was 8, he wanted a game console. My parents fought about it, but in the end my father paid. That console cost over $400. Around that same time, I wanted the box set of Harry Potter books, the hardcovers, all 7, maybe $80 total. My mother said, "Can't you just borrow them from the library?" I did well in high school. My teachers said I should apply to good universities. The University of Washington was right there in Seattle. Tuition wasn't cheap, but it wasn't insane either. My mother said, "Girls don't need that much education. Better to start working and help out the family." I put myself through school on federal student loans and weekend jobs. My mother never once praised me for it. She only ever complained whenever the school sent a bill for miscellaneous fees. "You're spending the family's money again." Kevin? He barely scraped through high school. My mother said boys need a trade more than a degree, and sent him to a community college auto mechanics program. She paid for everything, tuition, books, tools, and gave him $200 a month for pocket money. I never said anything. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I knew it wouldn't matter. I tried once. I was 15. Kevin stole the money I'd been saving for months, maybe $20 total, and spent it on game cards. I found out and we got into a huge fight. He started crying, which brought my mother running. Without a word, she slapped me across the face. The sound echoed through the whole kitchen. "Don't be so selfish. He's your little brother. He's just a kid, and you're making a fuss over pocket change." I stood by the stove with my hand over my cheek, tears streaming down my face, but I didn't make a sound. From that day on, I understood. In this house, my only correct choice was to shut up, get out of the way, and never fight for anything. So I learned to shut up. At 18, I got into UW's accounting program. Tuition came from federal loans and scholarships. My mother's face went long when she heard I was going to college. "We can't afford that," she said. "I'll take out loans," I said. She dropped it. I barely had a weekend for 4 years. Classes during the week, waiting tables at a restaurant near campus from Friday night through Sunday. Winter and summer breaks, I worked as a cashier at the mall. Christmas, when everyone else went home, I stayed on campus and worked double shifts because the holiday pay was better. I didn't go home much. It wasn't that I didn't want to, it was that there was nowhere for me there. Somewhere along the way, Kevin had turned my old room into his gaming den. My bed was gone. My desk was gone. The movie posters I'd spent months saving up for were all torn down. In their place, a gaming chair, a 32-inch monitor, and that permanent smell of potato chips he could never quite shake. The first time I came home and saw it, I sat on the living room couch all night. My mother said, "You're hardly ever here anyway," and your brother needs space for his friends. The gaming sounds from upstairs didn't stop until 3 in the morning. Kevin and his buddies were yelling and laughing, and I lay on that couch with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, understanding for the first time that there was no room for me in this house anymore. Then I graduated, got my CPA license, and joined the firm I'm still at now, starting as a junior audit assistant. The pay wasn't great that first year, around $3,000 a month after taxes, but I lived frugally and saved what I could. Once my mother knew I was earning, her calls got a lot more frequent. First it was the furnace needs replacing, $1,200. Then your father's car broke down, $2,300. Then Kevin wants to take a training course, $3,000. Then the neighbors bought their parents a new fridge, and ours is falling apart. I paid every single one, like a faucet I couldn't turn off. One winter, it got especially cold. My mother called and said the electric bill was too high. They couldn't cover it. Could I send $500? I sent it. A week later, she posted a picture on social media of Kevin's new limited edition sneakers. The caption said, "My boy has great taste." I looked those shoes up later. $480. My mother's phone calls never lasted more than 3 minutes. The opening was always, "Emily, honey." There was always a line somewhere in the middle that went, "You're the most reasonable one." And the ending was always, "Can you send that over as soon as possible?" 3 parts, every single time. After hanging up, I'd stare at my screen for a while, then open my banking app, type in the amount, and confirm the transfer. I got into the habit of screenshotting every transfer. I kept them in a folder on my phone labeled Family. At first, I wasn't sure why I was saving them. Maybe just to keep track. Money's money, after all. Looking back now, I think some part of me was waiting for a moment I couldn't yet name. 3 years ago, my father retired. He'd worked at the post office for 30 years, and with his pension plus what they'd saved, they bought a big house with a yard on the outskirts of town. My mother posted pictures in the family group chat. 3 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, front and back lawns. "Our family's new home," she wrote, practically glowing. Our family's. I stared at those 3 words for a long time. The next day, my mother called. "Emily, honey, we're still a little short on the mortgage. You're part of this family too, so we were hoping you could chip in." How much? $80,000. That year I'd just been promoted to senior and had saved up nearly $100,000. I'd been planning to buy a new car. My Corolla was pushing 100,000 miles, and the suspension was starting to make noises. My mother's voice was so smooth over the phone. "This house will be your home too, you know. You can come back anytime. And property values keep going up. It's an investment. When we sell it down the line, you'll get your share. We'd never shortchange you." I knew better. I'd worked in accounting long enough to see how these things play out. "We'll pay you back later" is the emptiest promise there is. But I told myself to let it go. Consider it repaying them for raising me. They'd been unfair, sure, but they'd still fed me and clothed me and put a roof over my head. You don't keep score with your own parents. I sent the money. $80,000 in one wire transfer. I put home purchase loan in the memo line, just in case. They never mentioned paying it back, and I never pushed. When the deed came through, my mother sent me a photo. The owners were listed as William Harris and Kevin Harris, my father and my brother.
Not me.
I asked why my name wasn't on it. "Kevin's the one who'll be getting married and starting a family here," she said. "It's easier for him to handle things if his name's on it. You're a girl. You won't be living here permanently anyway. It doesn't really matter." I didn't say anything. Then Kevin met Jessica. Blonde hair, heavy eyeliner, shiny lip gloss, and a smile that always seemed to flick upward at the corners. The first time I met her was at a family gathering. She sat next to Kevin the whole time, barely spoke to me, but had my mother eating out of her hand. "Oh, Auntie, your skin looks amazing. Auntie, this dish is incredible." My mother couldn't stop beaming. She talked about Jessica differently on the phone, too. That note of pride came through loud and clear. Jessica graduated high school, works at a department store cosmetics counter. Pretty, good personality. She's perfect for our Kevin. I'd been to that department store. Jessica stood behind the counter with her makeup done, and sure enough, she was striking. But I also knew she made maybe $2,000 a month after taxes. Her handbags and shoes all came from Kevin. And where did Kevin get his money? I don't think I need to spell it out. Last fall, Kevin announced he and Jessica were getting married. But Kevin had never held down a real job. He'd bounced through more careers than I could count: food delivery, used car sales, a short-lived handyman partnership with a friend. Every single one flamed out. Either it was too hard, or it didn't pay enough, or he fell out with his partners. My mother said he was unlucky with opportunities. I thought he was just missing the commitment gene. Now he wanted to open an auto shop. He had that community college certificate, and he picked up some real-world experience here and there, so I'll give him that much. He wasn't terrible with cars. But a shop needs more than skill. There's rent, equipment, licenses, insurance. All of it costs. And all of it came to me. 40,000. That was the number he gave me, verbatim. "Sis, I swear I'm going to make this work.
Just help me one last time."
Once I start making money, I'll pay you back for sure." The way he said "one last time" sounded so sincere. For a moment, I almost believed him.
"I send it anyway."
At least this time, he'd called it a loan. The word loan was right there in his text. I transferred 40,000, and he sent back a thank you sticker, a cartoon cat bowing with its paws together. Very cute.
I was such an idiot back then.
But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was opening day. My mother called and said I had to take time off work to help out. I told her I had an audit project I couldn't get out of, and she got huffy. "Your brother is starting his first business ever, and you can't even show up to support him?" I took a half day, drove my 9-year-old Corolla across half the city to his rented storefront. It was tiny, just a roll-up metal door and one room, with dried grease stains still on the floor. Kevin was standing out front in a brand-new work jacket greeting customers. Jessica was tottering around in heels handing out flyers. My mother and father were setting out fruit platters and drinks. When I arrived, my mother handed me a job. "Go straighten those flower baskets over there." At lunch, we all sat around one table. My mother kept piling food onto Kevin's plate. "Eat up. You've been working so hard today." My father hunched over his rice, without saying much. Jessica scrolled through her phone while she ate. I sat at the edge, in front of a bowl of untouched salad that nobody else wanted. I was 30 years old. I'd been working for 7 years, leading audit teams on projects worth millions. But at that table, I might as well have been a hired extra, brought in for the day, and given the seat nobody else wanted. Halfway through the meal, my mother looked up like she'd just remembered something. "Oh, Emily, I meant to ask. Kevin still doesn't have a place to live after the wedding. Your apartment's just sitting there. Why don't you let them stay there for a while?" I paused with my chopsticks in midair. "I live in my apartment, Mom. You're one person. A one-bedroom is plenty for you. They can stay there until they get on their feet, and then you can find something smaller."
"Mom,
I bought that place. With my own money. Don't be like that." She set her chopsticks down. "Your brother's in a tough spot. You should be helping him out." Look at you, you've been living it up all these years, eating well, spending freely, while he's been struggling back home. Doesn't that bother you? I glanced at Kevin. He was staring at his plate, pretending not to hear. Jessica was still on her phone, but the corner of her mouth ticked up just a fraction. I put my own chopsticks down and said I needed to get back to the office. I left. On the drive back, I noticed my hands were shaking. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My lips were pressed into a hard, tight line. There were deep grooves under my eyes. It was the first time I'd really seen my 30-year-old face. My mother brought up letting Kevin use your place 2 more times after that. I said no both times. She called me selfish, said I'd forgotten about family the moment I got some money in my pocket. One time she even said you're going to get married and move in with your husband anyway. The apartment's just going to sit empty. What's the harm in letting your brother use it? I said I wasn't married yet, and even if I were, my apartment was my apartment, and that didn't change anything. My mother was so mad, she didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Those were the best 2 weeks I'd had in years. Then came the accident. Honestly, I'm not sure I'd call it an accident. I'd been working late, my head still spinning over a discrepancy in one of the project accounts, and my mind just wandered. Coming around a curve, I turned the wheel too late and hit the guardrail. The airbag deployed, and I was dazed for a long moment, my ears ringing. Police came, then an ambulance. They took statements, took photos, took me to the hospital. X-rays, casting, medication. 4 hours gone. During that time, my phone rang 3 times. First was my mother. She wanted me to come home for dinner that weekend so Jessica and I could talk about wedding plans. I told her I was in the hospital. She paused, asked what happened. I said a car accident, not serious. She said get some rest, then hung up. Second was Kevin. A text. He'd found a used set of shop equipment, originally $12,000, now down to $8,000. Could I help him out? I said I was in the hospital. He said, no rush, just send it when you can. Third was my mother again. That call about the apartment. I said yes. I'd transfer it once I was discharged. After I hung up, I sat in that emergency room chair for a long time. My left arm was in a sling, my right hand holding the phone, the screen still showing our family group chat. That photo of the new house was still there. Our family's home. Scroll down. Messages from her asking for money. Urgent family need. Send when you can. Kevin needs inventory. Your father's not feeling well. Doctor's bills. Scroll further. The red envelope she sent for my 30th birthday. $10. Get yourself a coffee. Scroll further. The watch she'd posted for Kevin's birthday. Dark blue velvet box. The receipt in the photo clearly read $2,200. I started crying. Not sobbing, just tears that wouldn't stop. The nurse thought I was in pain and offered more painkillers. I said no. Thank you, I'm fine. I was crying because I finally understood. I was 30 years old. No savings. No assets. Not a single person to sit with me in the hospital with a broken wrist. And this hadn't happened because I'd been unlucky or incompetent. It happened because I'd been hollowed out by people who claimed to love me. I got home past midnight, sat on the couch for a long time, my head churning. At some point, I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. I created a new folder. I named it FI 2024. It's what I used at work, FY for fiscal year. But what went into this folder had nothing to do with work. I was going to start an audit of my entire life. I started pulling bank statements that night. Online records went back 7 years. Anything older was on paper, but I'd kept everything, every monthly statement from my first year on the job, filed by year in a box, one neat stack after another. I spread them across the table and started from the very first one. The first payment I sent home was 6 years ago. I'd been working for a year and had saved a little. My mother called and said the furnace was leaking, needed replacing, 5,000. I sent 5,000. That month's rent was 850. Car payment was 320. After groceries and gas, I barely had anything left. 3 months later, my father's car, 2,300. Then Kevin's training course, 3,000. Then the roof leaked. Half the shingles needed replacing, 7,000. Then a new refrigerator, 1,200. One after another, like water through a broken dam. The first couple of years it was still manageable, here a few thousand, there a few thousand. But it escalated. Kevin needed tools, 5,000. Kevin wanted to go into business with a friend, 10,000. Kevin got into a minor accident and had to pay damages, 8,000. My father had minor surgery for 1,000 out of pocket. New flooring for the house, 6,000. Kevin's used pickup truck, 8,000. Jessica's birthday, and Kevin wanted to buy her a handbag. He asked me for 2,000. I entered every number into an Excel spreadsheet. Date, amount, description, method of transfer, screenshots of any relevant text conversations. By 3 in the morning, my hands were numb, but my eyes kept getting sharper. The last line came to 203,000. $203,000. I leaned back in my chair and stared at that number for a long time. That was every dollar I'd saved over 7 years of working. If I still had that money, I could buy a real 2-bedroom condo in the city. I could buy a brand new Tesla. I could get an MBA. I could just leave it in the bank and collect interest. Instead, it was in my mother's house, my father's car, Kevin's shop, Jessica's handbags. I saved the file, shut down the computer, and poured myself a glass of water. Outside the window, the sky was starting to lighten. Seattle winter dawns come late. At 6 it's still pitch black, and you don't see any gray-blue light until past 7. I stood at the window with my glass, watching the headlights stream down the highway, and I had only one thought. I was going to take that money back. Not out of revenge. Not out of spite. Just because it was mine. From that day on, I entered a state I'd never experienced before. During the day, I worked as usual. Mr. Rodriguez, the partner who supervised me, a Mexican-American man in his 50s with a quiet manner, noticed something was off. One evening he called me into his office and asked if everything was all right. I said I was fine, just not sleeping great. He looked at me, nodded, and said I could take time off anytime I needed it. I thanked him and left. At night, I went home and did what I do best: audit. I went through 7 years of text messages with my family. My mother had always preferred texting for money requests. She thought it felt more formal than calling. Those messages were all there, clear as day, asking for money, reminding me to transfer it, following up when I hadn't replied fast enough. The tone shifted over time, from polite to entitled to impatient. A slow-motion descent. I screenshotted everything, filed it, numbered it, cross-referenced every dollar amount with my bank records. About 60,000 of the total was clearly marked as loan in my notes. Kevin had said, "I'll pay you back, sis." Those words were right there in his texts. The rest, over 140,000, was labeled with vaguer terms. For the family. Emergency. Send as soon as you can. Kevin needs it. My mother never once used the word borrow in any of her messages. She said give and transfer and help out. My hands shook as I organized it all. Not from fear. From something else. An energy that had been building for years and finally found an outlet. I forced myself to breathe slow, to stay calm, to go line by line. Next was the house. I logged onto the county property records website and pulled up my father's house. Public records showed only two owners, William Harris and Kevin Harris. Not me. That $80,000 didn't even make a ripple in the legal record. I stared at the screen for a long time, then took a screenshot and saved it to the folder. Then Kevin's business. I'd helped him fill out the registration forms because he said, "You know this stuff, sis." The registered address on the forms was my apartment because at the time he hadn't found a shop yet. "Just use your address for mail," he'd said. "I'll change it once I get a real location."
I hadn't thought twice about it then.
Now, looking back, I saw it for what it was, a major vulnerability. The business was registered under Kevin and Jessica's names, but the address was mine. That meant all his business correspondence, tax documents, government notices, maybe even loan applications, came to my mailbox. If he'd been cutting corners on taxes, if there were compliance issues, the IRS's letters would come to me too. And Kevin? I knew him well enough. He'd always taken the easy way. In the 6 months he'd been running that shop, had he been filing taxes properly? Paying employer taxes and sales tax on time? Reporting his full income? Knowing him, I doubted any of it. I started researching. The Washington State Department of Revenue had an online tip system for reporting suspected tax fraud. You could submit anonymously, just needed the business name, registered address, actual address, and the reason you suspected something was off. If the tip checked out, they'd open an investigation. I bookmarked that page. I didn't submit anything yet. Not the right time. Then Jessica. I didn't want to go after her, but I had to factor her in. She was living in my mother's house, pregnant, wedding plans already underway. If Kevin's income stream started to look shaky, she'd be the first one to raise hell. I needed to account for every variable. Finally, my mother. She'd worked at a grocery store for 20 years and was now on a pension. But once, she'd casually mentioned that she still did some bookkeeping on the side, helping out some small shop owners I used to know. A little extra cash, maybe $1,000 a month. My stomach had dropped when I heard that. She'd been a cashier for 2 decades, so she knew her way around a ledger, but she had no accounting license, no formal training. If she was just helping friends for free, that was one thing. But if she was charging for it and not reporting the income, that was something else entirely. "Mom, is that legal?" I'd asked. She'd gotten defensive. "Of course it's legal. I'm not evading taxes or anything." But I knew what that meant. Not evading taxes just meant not caught yet. I documented all of it.
But I didn't act.
I waited. Marion Foster was the lawyer I found online. Her office was on the 7th floor of an old building downtown. The elevator clanked and shuddered, and you had to pry the door open with both hands. But inside, the space was neat and professional, with awards on the walls and photos of past clients. Marion herself was in her early 40s, short hair, silver-rimmed glasses, and a measured way of speaking. I handed her my manila envelope, and she spent over an hour flipping through the contents without a word. When she finished, she closed the envelope, took off her glasses, and looked at me. "You did a lot of work," she said. "I'm an auditor," I said. She smiled, leaning back in her chair. 7 years of transfer records, text screenshots, property records, business registration info, and your mother's side bookkeeping. How long did this take you? 3 weeks. And I still went to work.
She nodded.
Tapped her index finger on the desk a few times, processing. Legally speaking, what your mother and brother have done could be classified as financial coercion and emotional abuse, she said. But these cases are tricky because most of it was verbal, lack of written agreements. That's why I brought written evidence, I said. The $80,000 for the down payment. Any written agreement on that?
No.
But she mentioned it in the family group chat. She said, word for word, Emily contributed $80,000 to help buy the house. I have a screenshot of that. Marian nodded. That can be argued as an investment or a loan. No formal IOU, but there's her own acknowledgement in writing. A judge could give that weight. I don't just want the $80,000, I said. I want all of it. $203,000. Marian looked at me for 3 full seconds. Then we'll need a more comprehensive strategy, she said. We talked for nearly 4 hours that afternoon. Went through every angle. The civil suit for recovery of the full amount, backed by all documentation. The tax tip line as leverage. I wouldn't tell her exactly when I'd submit it. And finally, a formal cease and desist letter notifying my parents and brother to return my keys and vacate any personal belongings they'd left in my apartment. It's a combination punch, Marian said. Hit them with everything at once. Their psychological defenses will crumble fastest that way. I know, I said. In auditing, we call it a surprise inspection. Marian laughed. It was the first time I'd seen her really relax. I like you, she said. Clear-headed, prepared, knows what she wants. I didn't used to know, I said. I figured it out recently. Walking out of her office that day, Seattle was still drizzling, the fine, persistent March rain that soaks through everything. It hit my face, cold and sharp, but I didn't put up my umbrella. I stood on the curb and took a deep breath, feeling something growing in my chest. Something I'd never had before in 30 years. Resolve. I started putting pressure on them. Before, when my mother called, I'd just say, okay, got it. I'll send it right away. Now I started pushing back. She called about the apartment transfer again. Mom, you didn't even visit me in the hospital when I broke my wrist, I said.
She paused.
I told you to rest up. It wasn't life-threatening. On my 30th birthday, you sent me a $10 gift. For Kevin's birthday, you bought him a $2,000 watch. Does that seem fair to you? Her voice shot up instantly. Why are you bringing up things from years ago? You're the older sister. Of course you should be more generous. You're a girl anyway. You'll be dependent on your husband's family someday. What do you need to hoard money for? I support myself, I said. Support yourself? You're still single, living alone, and you have the nerve to talk back. Look at Jessica, smart girl, got herself pregnant, secured her future. That's the kind of woman who knows what she's doing. You? 30 years old, and you don't even have a family of your own. I have a family. My apartment is my home. Your apartment?
She scoffed.
1 bedroom, not even a guest room. We can't even come stay with you for 2 days. Look at our house, 3 bedrooms, 2 living rooms. That's a real home. Yours is just a hole in the wall. Good, I said. Then you don't need to come. She hung up in a huff. I stared at the screen for a moment, and the corner of my mouth twitched upward. Less than half an hour later, my father called. His voice was the same as always, slow, kind of halting, like a tape that's worn out. Emily, honey, your mother says you've been in a mood lately. Is work too stressful? Why don't you come home and rest for a couple days? I'm fine, I said. Dad, I want to ask you something. Go ahead. That house.
The one I put 80,000 into.
You know about that, right? A long silence on the other end. My father had never argued with my mother in his life. He always went along with what she said. But I knew he had his own scales. He saw everything. He just never spoke up. Yes, he finally said. Do you think I should have a share in that house? More silence. His breathing got heavier, like he was weighing every word. After maybe 10 seconds. Yes, I think you should. Thank you for telling me that, I said. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up and leaned back on the couch, and the tears came again. But this time it wasn't sadness. It was just finally. I started working on Kevin too. One day I texted him. A letter from the IRS came to my address, addressed to your business. I haven't opened it. Do you want to pick it up? He called back in less than 2 minutes.
Sis.
What letter? Don't open it. I'll come get it tomorrow. Why is your business still registered to my address?
I asked.
Didn't you open the shop months ago? He stammered. I never got around to changing it. It's no big deal. Lots of people do it. Are you sure? I said. If the IRS finds out your registered address doesn't match your actual business location, and your reported income doesn't match what you actually earned, you know what happens, right? He went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, higher, tighter. Sis, what do you mean? Did you do something?
I didn't do anything, I said.
I'm just letting you know. The letter's here whenever you want to pick it up. But if there's something wrong with your taxes, picking up the letter won't fix the underlying problem. Sis, you can't do this to me. His voice cracked. I just started this business. Jessica's pregnant. I'm under so much pressure. I know, I said. That's why I'm warning you. Change your registered address as soon as you can. And maybe get your tax filings in order. Because next time, it might not be just a letter. I texted Marian after I hung up. The fish is biting. She sent back a smiley face. A week later, I sent my mother the email. I'd rewritten it several times before I was satisfied. The opening line was, Mom, please find attached a summary of all financial transactions between me and the family over the past 7 years. Below it, the Excel sheet, every entry clearly listed with supporting screenshots from our text conversations. The last paragraph took me the longest to compose. Mom, the total comes to $203,000. About $60,000 of that was explicitly labeled as a loan. The rest was never clearly designated as either gift or loan. If it was a loan, please let me know your repayment plan. If it was a gift, please explain to me why a daughter is expected to donate almost all of her earnings to the family before marriage, while a son has never been asked to contribute a single cent. My finger hovered over the mouse for a moment. Then I hit send. I sent it on a Thursday night. Friday came and went. My phone stayed quiet. Saturday morning my mother called once, then again. I didn't pick up. By the afternoon, she texted me 4 words. What do you mean by this? I didn't reply. Sunday she called 4 more times, all ignored. Monday morning I took a half day off and went to Marian's office. We signed the paperwork that day. 3 documents. The civil complaint, formally requesting the court to order repayment of all $203,000. The tax tip, already filled out and ready for submission. And the formal cease and desist letter to my parents, demanding they return my keys and remove their belongings from my apartment. Marian laid all 3 in front of me and gave me one last chance to reconsider. Once we file these, there's no going back, she said. Are you sure? I picked up the pen and signed each one. I've had no way back, I said, since the day I was born. All three went out the same day. The civil complaint by courier to my parents' house. The tax tip submitted online, with a confirmation number generated by the system. The cease and desist by certified mail, signature required. That afternoon, I worked like normal. Finished a report.
Sat through a project meeting.
Clocked out at 5:30. On the way home, I stopped at the grocery store and bought chicken breast, broccoli, mushrooms, and a bottle of red wine. At home, I made noodles, ate, washed the dishes, and settled onto the couch with the TV on. Some nature documentary was playing. African plains, a mother gazelle trying to fight off a cheetah to save her calf. I watched for a little while, then turned it off. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No dreams. No waking up in the middle of the night. Just a deep, solid sleep that lasted all the way until morning. The next day at 7 a.m., my phone rang. My mother. I answered. Her voice was something I'd never heard before in 30 years. High, shrill, shaking, a kind of hysterical edge that cut right through the speaker. Emily, you've lost your mind. You're actually suing me and your father? We're your parents. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You ungrateful. You heartless. I held the phone away from my ear. I'm asking for what's mine, I said. Yours? You ate our food, slept under our roof your whole childhood, and now you're going to sue your own parents? Where's your conscience? Are you even human? I do have a conscience, I said. That's why I kept receipts. That 80,000, you gave that to the family. You said it yourself. And now you're trying to take it back like some kind of thief. Mom, I explained it clearly in the email. I said, my voice flat and even. If it was a gift, then tell me why. Why did you expect me to pour all my money into the family while Kevin never contributed a cent? Why did I have to take out loans for college while his community college tuition was covered in full? Why did Kevin get a $2,000 watch while my birthday present was $10? Is that fair? Is that really a gift? She sputtered, stopped for a few seconds, then came back even louder. Kevin is a boy. Boys build families and carry on the name. You're a girl. Once you marry, you'll belong to someone else's family. If you don't contribute now, you never will. So my only value, I said, is to be drained dry and thrown away. Don't talk like that. We're doing this for your own good, building up good karma. If you sue your own parents, you'll pay for it someday. Mom, I said, let me ask you something.
What?
Can you name one single thing you've ever done for me that was purely for my benefit? Just one. The line went silent. I could hear her breathing, heavy and uneven. If you go through with this lawsuit, she finally said, you won't have a family anymore. I haven't had one, I said, since the day you slapped me across the face for $20 when I was 15. I hung up. This time I didn't cry. Kevin called the next afternoon. His voice was completely panicked, almost tearful. Sis, what did you do? The IRS sent people to my shop. They're auditing me. What am I supposed to do? Jessica found out and she's threatening to leave. She said this whole thing is too embarrassing. Why would that be my problem? How can you be this cold? I'm your brother, your own flesh and blood. You call me, sis, when you need money, I said. You call me, sis, when you're in trouble. You call me, sis, when something goes wrong. Kevin, you've said my name more times asking for money than you ever have just because I'm your sister. He had nothing to say to that. I gave you 80,000, 3 years of my savings. You said you were starting a business, I gave. You needed equipment, I gave. You wanted to get married. I was even ready to give you my apartment. But did you ever once ask what I needed? What do you need, sis? Tell me, I'll get it for you. I need you to stay away from me, I said. For good. I hung up. My father didn't call. He sent a text, just a few words. Emily, I'm sorry. I stared at those words for a long time. Typed and deleted, until I finally sent back. You were never cruel to me. You just never took my side. He didn't reply. The court date was set for 4 months out. Marion said that timeline was normal. Court calendars were packed, and the evidence was substantial. I went about my life in those 4 months. Worked, ate, slept. But my phone kept buzzing with missed calls, my mother ringing 5 times a day, every day. I didn't answer any of them. She started calling from different numbers. I'd pick up if I didn't recognize the area code, and hang up the second I heard her voice. Then came the texts, a flood of them. Angry, pleading, angry again, pleading again, like a ball of yarn rolling back and forth. One long message read something like, I know I wasn't fair to you before. I regret it. Please drop the lawsuit. Let's sit down and talk like a family. I didn't respond. The next day, another one. If you don't drop this, I'm coming to your office to talk to your boss. Let him see what kind of person he's employing. I didn't respond to that either. I'd already given Mr. Rodriguez a heads up. There was some family conflict, and if anyone showed up at the office asking for me, please direct them to security. He gave me one look, nodded, and didn't ask a single question. Kevin went quiet after a while. The IRS audit was underway. His little shop was being picked apart. The amounts weren't huge enough to trigger criminal charges, but the fines and penalties and back taxes were more than enough to sink him. Jessica left him. My father told me later she had an abortion and moved back in with her parents. Never saw Kevin again. My mother was furious, calling Jessica ungrateful and a gold digger for days. I heard all of this and said nothing. A month before the trial, Marion called to say my mother had reached out to a mediator requesting a settlement. What do you think? Marion asked. I leaned back in my office chair. Outside, Seattle spring was in full swing, cherry blossoms lining the streets, clouds of pink and white. What are the terms? She's offering to return some of the money in exchange for dropping the suit and withdrawing the IRS complaint. Some? She didn't specify. The mediator said she wants to talk face to face. I was quiet for a moment. Marion waited on the other end, patient.
Fine, I said.
Let's talk. May 17th. I took a half day and drove to the mediation center. A squat gray building with 2 camellia bushes in full bloom out front. Marion was already there, waiting by the entrance. Nervous? She asked. No, I said. The mediation room was modest, a long table with chairs on both sides. I walked in and saw my mother and father already seated across from me. For months had aged her visibly. Her hair was much grayer. The lines around her eyes and mouth had deepened. She wore a navy blue jacket, her hands clasped on the table, knuckles white. My father was hunched beside her, shoulders rounded, like an old bird caught in the rain. Kevin wasn't there. The mediator, a middle-aged woman named Linda with a gentle voice, explained the process and asked my mother to speak first. When my mother opened her mouth, her voice was hoarse, a tone I'd never heard from her. Emily, she said, I came here today to talk to you properly. I didn't respond. I know I wasn't fair. I was biased. I know that now. But it was just how things were. Your brother was sickly as a child. He needed more care. You were strong. You could handle everything on your own, so I didn't worry about you as much. It wasn't that I didn't love you. It's that I thought you didn't need me. I met her eyes and stayed quiet. The money, I can pay it back, but I can't do it all at once.
Give us time.
And the house, we'll add your name. And Kevin's business, could you talk to the IRS, ask them to stop the investigation? He's already been fined so much, the shop is barely hanging on. She kept her eyes on the table the whole time, fingers twisting together. Her voice was slower than before, lower. Sometimes a sentence would stall halfway through, and she'd have to take a deep breath to finish it. My father never lifted his head. When she finished, the mediator looked at me. I opened my folder. Mom, I said, do you know why I'm doing all of this? She didn't look up. It's not about the money. If it were just the money, there were easier ways. I could have stopped answering your calls. I could have moved to another city. I could have just refused to send anything, and there wouldn't have been much you could do about it. She finally lifted her eyes to meet mine. I'm doing this because I want you to understand something. The way you spoiled Kevin, it wasn't kindness. It was the worst thing you could have done for him. You gave him everything, and now he's a grown man who can't support himself. He's in his 30s and still dependent on mom and dad and his sister. Do you honestly think that's love? My mother's lips trembled. As for me, I continued, you never gave me anything. I paid for my own college.
I found my own job.
I bought my own house. Every single dollar you took from me over the years, I earned it myself. I don't owe you a thing. I paused. But I'm still willing to settle. Not because I think you're right, because I'm 30 years old and I don't want to waste any more time on this. Pay me back, add my name to the deed, and I'll drop the rest. Those are my terms. Non-negotiable. The room was silent for a long, long time. Finally, my mother nodded. The settlement agreement ran 8 pages. $203,000 to be repaid over 2 years at minimum $8,500 per month. First payment due within 30 days of signing. My name added to the property deed, 1/3 ownership, to be completed within 90 days. Kevin's business address changed within 1 month. I'd withdraw the IRS tip, though any ongoing investigation would be at the agency's discretion. When my mother signed the last page, her hand shook. She picked up the pen, put it down, picked it up again. Finally, my father reached over and steadied her wrist, and she got the signature down. Linda collected the documents and offered a small smile. I wish you all the best. My mother stood and swayed slightly. My father caught her arm. She turned to face me, her lips parting and closing like she was trying to form words. Are you satisfied now? She asked. I looked into her eyes. They were the same eyes that had looked down at me 30 years ago when she was holding Kevin at the hospital door. Just older, dimmer, not as bright as they used to be. Mom, I said, let me ask you one last thing. She stopped, waiting. If you and Dad had split everything fairly between me and Kevin from the beginning, would I still have taken care of you? She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The answer is yes, I said. I would have. I would have worked hard, lived a good life, and helped you with anything you needed. I would have done my part. But instead, you gave everything to him. You turned him into someone who can't stand on his own, and you turned me into your enemy. Now you've lost both of us. My father finally looked up. His eyes were red. His lips moved, but nothing came out. I picked up my bag, nodded to Marion, and walked out. The afternoon sun was beautiful. May in Seattle is the best time of year. The cherry blossoms were still hanging on, and the rhododendrons were starting to bloom, purple and pink and white spilling over fences and garden walls. I walked down the sidewalk, breathing slow and easy, and I swear the air tasted sweet. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. I know I was wrong. Can you forgive me? I didn't answer. I put the phone back in my pocket and kept walking. I got home before dark, dropped my bag in the hallway, kicked off my shoes, and poured myself a glass of water. The window was open, and the evening breeze drifted in, bringing the scent of flowers from the neighbor's yard. The pothos on my balcony had grown beautifully. It had been a small cutting when I bought it. Now its vines hung down nearly 3 feet, glossy green, swaying gently in the wind. I watered it and stood there for a while, watching the sunset. It was an ordinary sunset, just gray-blue sky with a band of orange along the horizon. No fireworks, no blazing pink and gold. Just a very normal Seattle dusk. But I stood there for a long time, thinking nothing at all. That night, before bed, I scrolled through my phone photos. There was one from years ago. I must have been 21 or 22, standing outside the university library with an armful of books, grinning like an idiot. I'd just gotten my first internship offer, and I remember feeling so sure that if I worked hard enough, everything would be okay. 10 years later, so much had happened. So much had been lost. But lying in bed that night, with a thin stripe of moonlight falling across the wall, I stared at that silver line for a long time, and then I closed my eyes. 7 o'clock the next morning, the alarm went off. I got up, brushed my teeth, made breakfast, toasted bread, drank coffee, got dressed, grabbed my bag, walked to the car, drove to the office, parked, took the elevator upstairs, said good morning to the team, and opened my laptop. It was a day just like any other day, but somehow everything felt different. The months that followed were steady. Every month, the payment arrived on time. My mother never missed one. Sometimes she sent a little extra with a memo like, buy yourself something nice, or it's getting cold, get a scarf. I sent the extra back every time, with the note, thanks, I'll buy my own. She called a few more times. Her voice was tentative now, not the demanding tone she used to have. Emily, honey, would you like to come home for dinner this weekend? I'll make your favorite. How's work? Are you tired? Do you want me to send you anything? I said no thanks, I'm fine, every time. I never went back. Kevin sent me one long text message. He said he'd moved to another state, Oregon, and was working as a long-haul truck driver. He said he now understood how hard it was to make it on your own, and that he was sorry for how he'd treated me. I typed back 3 words. Glad you're doing well. Then I blocked him. Not out of anger. I just didn't want him in my life anymore. Forgiving someone doesn't mean letting them stay. My father checked in now and then. Sometimes a photo, sometimes a brief message. Cold weather coming, stay warm. Your mother's health isn't too bad. The apple tree in the yard is bearing fruit. I'd reply with a smiley face or a short got it. That was all. They still lived in that big house. The deed now had my name on it, 1/3 owner, right after Kevin's. In theory, I could go back any time, but I never did. That place stopped being my home a long time ago. My home was this 1-bedroom apartment. The pothos that kept climbing along its string across half the balcony. The half-finished audit reports stacked on my desk. The milk and eggs and vegetables in my own refrigerator. Every piece of clothing in my closet, chosen by me. They looked ordinary, but they were all mine. In August, I took 5 days off. Didn't go far, just drove north along the coast. Washington's shoreline is long and rugged, with rocky cliffs and sandy stretches and lighthouses, and those old-growth forests thick with moss. I spent 2 nights in a little town called Port Angeles, walking on the beach during the day and drinking local beer at a bar in the evenings. The bar was old, creaky wooden floors, black and white fishing boat photos from decades ago on the walls. The bartender was a gray-haired man who didn't ask questions, just refilled my water glass now and then. On the third evening, I sat on the sand and watched the sunset. It was a spectacular one, the whole Pacific turning gold and crimson, clouds purple, the water breaking into shards of silver. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries stretching long on the wind. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Just a few words. "Emily, happy birthday." I'd completely forgotten. I was 31 today. I stared at the screen for a long time. The light from the phone was pale in the twilight, warming my fingertips. The sea breeze came in, salt and brine. On the rocks nearby, a few seals were hauled out, round and motionless, staring at the water. I turned the phone face down on the sand. The sunset lasted a long time. After the sun finally dipped below the horizon, one last sliver of light remained, thin and gold as a thread. I stood up, brushed the sand off my pants, and walked back to the car. Tomorrow I'd go back to work. A new project was starting next week. Mr. Rodriguez said I'd be leading the team. There would be interns to train, reports to review, deadlines to meet. And that was okay, because it was my life now. Kevin went quiet after he started the long-haul trucking job. I didn't reach out to him, and my father only mentioned him in passing every so often, once, that he'd passed through Seattle and wanted to see me, but I didn't respond. Another time, that he'd switched to a Midwest route. After that, I didn't hear much. My mother kept up the monthly payments. For the first 6 months, she sent exactly $8,500 each time. Then, in the 7th month, she sent an extra $500. She kept sending $900 extra for the next 3 months after that. I understood what she was doing, trying to soften me up with small gestures. I never acknowledged it. Once she texted that her lower back was hurting. She'd seen a doctor, diagnosed with a herniated disc, needed physical therapy. I was in the middle of lunch when I read it. I set the phone down and finished eating. 2 hours later, I picked it back up and typed, "Make sure you follow through with the treatment." She replied, "Okay."
Just like that.
If I said I felt nothing about all of it, I'd be lying. She was still my mother. 30 years of memories don't just evaporate. But the feeling had changed. Before, it was the kind of hurt that made me go back for more, hoping for scraps. Now it was like looking through a pane of glass. I could see her. I could acknowledge her, but I wasn't going to press my face against it anymore. If she was well, I wished her well. If she wasn't, there wasn't much I could do. That was the new distance. In October, the property deed transfer finally went through. The house was officially 1/3 mine. The day I went to the county office to sign the last document, the clerk handed me the new deed with 3 names printed in neat, official ink. William Harris, Kevin Harris, Emily Harris. I can't describe how that felt. Like 30 years of my life had been condensed into a single official document. Their names and mine on the same piece of paper. Did that make us a family? The deed didn't care about feelings. It only registered legal ownership. I put the document away and never looked at it again. Later, my father texted that he and Kevin had talked and wanted to buy my 1/3 share. I said fine, at market value. A few months later he wrote again, said they couldn't scrape the money together yet. Could they wait? I said no rush. The house had stopped mattering to me, honestly. That 80,000 was coming back through the monthly installments. By the end of my 31st year, my mother had paid off almost half of it. She said she'd clear the rest by next summer. If everything went as planned, by my 32nd birthday, all $203,000 would be back in my account. Plus what I'd saved over the past year and a half, I'd be looking at seven figures again. But the feeling was completely different now. It wasn't the money itself.
It was what the money meant.
Before, every penny I saved ended up siphoned away. Nothing ever really belonged to me. It was just a temporary holding spot for a family fund that would be drawn on whenever anyone needed it. Now, when I spent $1, I knew it was mine. If I spent it, it was my choice. No one could reach in and take it. That sense of security was solid in a way I'd never felt before. November brought a big project, a public company annual audit, and I was the senior associate leading the team. 6 of us total. 3 fresh graduates doing their first real field work, 2 junior colleagues with a little more experience. The timeline was tight, nearly 2 months of late nights and weekend work. One evening, Mr. Rodriguez came by my desk. I was hunched over a spreadsheet, half lost in the numbers, and he tapped my shoulder. "You've been in a better mood lately," he said. "I have." I looked up. I didn't notice. "You smile more now," he said. "You never used to smile at all in the office." I blinked. He walked away after that, leaving me staring at my screen, my head buzzing. I smiled more now. I hadn't noticed at all. But if colleagues saw it, if my boss saw it, then something had genuinely shifted. That night, on my drive home, I stopped at a bridge over the lake. The water below reflected the city lights in scattered, shimmering fragments. I sat in the car for a moment, watching, then the light turned green and I drove on. When had this change happened? I couldn't pinpoint it. Around that time, I developed a new habit. No matter how tired I was when I got home, I'd step out onto the balcony and look at the pothos. It had grown so long now, climbing along the string I tied across half the balcony, leaves glossy and deep green. Sometimes I'd water it. Sometimes I'd just stand there for a minute, then go back inside and get ready for bed. This rhythm carried on for about a month. Near the end of the project, I was in the office rushing to finish a report when my phone buzzed. A message from my father. "Your mother's in the hospital." I stared at the words for a moment, then closed the chat and went back to the report. About 10 minutes later, I realized I hadn't written a single coherent sentence, so I picked up the phone and called him. "What happened?" My father's voice sounded worn, more strained than usual.
"She fell."
"Broke her leg. Doctor said at her age the bones are brittle. She needs surgery to put pins in. They're admitting her tonight. Operation tomorrow." Bad. The surgery itself isn't complicated, but recovery will take time, and she'll be hospitalized for a while. She didn't want me to tell you, but I thought you should know. A beat of silence. "I understand," I said. I hung up and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The office hummed with the drone of the air conditioner and the clatter of the printer. My report was 3 pages short, due tomorrow. I sat for a moment. Then I looked up the hospital's location. About 4 hours from Seattle, 3.5 if traffic was light. Checked my calendar for the next day. A morning meeting, an afternoon briefing, nothing I absolutely had to be present for. I texted Mr. Rodriguez and told him I needed a day off. He responded, "No problem." The next morning, I left at 6:30. The sky was just starting to lighten. Not much traffic on I-5. I drove my new Honda heading south, the autumn colors of October blazing along the roadside, yellow and red patches strung together like a long, woven blanket. About an hour in, my father texted, "She just went into surgery." I replied, "I'm on my way." I got to the hospital around 11. The parking lot was huge. I circled twice before finding a spot. Took the elevator to the third floor, walked down the hall to the door with the Harris placard. I pushed it open. My father was dozing in a chair by the bed. He startled awake at the sound, and when he saw me, his face froze with surprise. My mother was lying on the bed, her right leg in a heavy cast suspended from a ceiling frame. Her face was pale and drawn, thinner than I remembered. She turned at the noise, and when she saw me in the doorway, her eyes went wide. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was hoarse. "Dad told me," I said, walking over and sitting down in the other chair. The room was small, 2 beds, one empty. On the nightstand was a glass of water and half an apple, sliced and soaking in salt water to keep it from browning, but it was already turning at the edges. My mother kept looking at me, mouth pressed shut. Her hair was a mess, sleep crust at the corners of her eyes, her lips cracked and dry, a far cry from the put-together woman she usually was. I could see the tape from an 4 needle on the back of her right hand, the blue veins visible under her thinning skin. "How did the surgery go?" I asked my father. "The doctor said it went well. Pins are in, now she just needs to rest and heal. She'll be here for a while, until the stitches come out." "Good," I said. "She should rest." My mother still hadn't said anything, just kept staring at me. I noticed her eyes were reddening around the edges. Her lips pressed tighter, like she was holding something back. Finally, she spoke again, thin and raspy. "Are you hungry? There are cookies in the cabinet." "I'm not hungry." More silence. Just the steady beep of the heart monitor and the rumble of carts rolling down the hallway. Sunlight poured through the window, bright and clean across the white sheets. I stayed for about an hour. The nurse came in once to change the dressing, check her blood pressure, ask about pain levels. My mother cooperated quietly. After the nurse left, she looked at me again, opened her mouth, and managed only, "You must be busy with work. You didn't have to come all this way." "I'm already here," I said. A little while later, I stood up and said I'd go get some food. My father said he'd come too, and I could stay with my mother. He walked out ahead of me, his steps slower than before. In the hospital cafeteria, he ordered a sandwich and coffee. I got a salad. We sat by the window, midday sun beating down on the plastic tabletop. He took a bite of his sandwich and chewed for a long time before swallowing. "She was talking about you all night," he said. I didn't answer. Not anything specific. Just going over old stories. How you were such a good kid, helping around the house from age 5, coming home from school to watch your brother, never making a fuss about toys, never bragging when you got good grades. She'd find out from report cards. He stared down at his sandwich, voice fading. "She said she's sorry." The cafeteria speaker was playing an old country song, guitar twanging lazily over the clink of dishes. I poked at my salad with my fork, not looking up at him. "She's never said that to my face," I said. "She's stubborn. Always has been." He took a sip of coffee. "But she knows. This past year and a half, she's changed. That sharp tongue of hers has gone quiet. Sometimes she gets up in the middle of the night and sits in the dark living room for hours." I didn't respond. "That house," he said, setting down his cup. "Kevin and I talked. We want to buy your third back. We're still scraping the money together. Your mother says once her pension savings build up a little more, we'll send it over. After that, the house will be just ours. No more ties to you." "Fine," I said. "Market rate is fine." My father nodded and went back to his sandwich without another word. I stayed at the hospital until dusk. In the afternoon, my mother woke up and saw I was still there. Something flickered across her face, hard to read. She reached for the cup on the nightstand and couldn't quite get it. I stood and handed it to her. Her fingers brushed my hand as she took it.
Cold.
Your mother did a lot of things wrong, she said suddenly. I sat back down and looked at her. I used to think, you're a girl. You'll belong to someone else's family someday.
So, why put effort into you?
Your brother is a boy. He's going to carry this family forward. Everything should go to him. I really believed that was the right thing back then. I never thought about how it hurt you. She held the cup and stared at the ceiling. After you left last year, the house felt so empty.
Kevin left.
Jessica left. Just me and your father rattling around that big place. Some days we barely said 2 words to each other. I'd sit in the living room with the TV on, but I wasn't watching.
I just kept thinking about the past.
And the person I thought about the most was you. She set the cup down and turned her head toward me. You used to laugh all the time. A bright, open laugh. Then, at some point, you stopped. I didn't notice then, but I notice now. I was the one who broke that in you. The heart monitor beeped steady and even. Outside, the light was fading. Autumn evenings come early. Dusk starts creeping in around 4, and by 5 the sky is already a soft, dimming gray.
I didn't know what to say.
These were words I'd waited 30 years to hear. But now that I was hearing them, I felt no great swell of emotion. No tears, no catharsis. Just a quiet stillness, like listening to a stranger tell a very old story. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said. I just needed you to know. I know. I stood up and pushed my chair back in. I should go, I said. I have work tomorrow. My mother nodded. My father got up from the bench in the hallway and walked me to the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw him still standing there, shoulders stooped, one hand raised in a small wave. The drive home was completely dark by then. I-5 was packed with cars, a river of red taillights stretching ahead. I cracked the window an inch, and the October wind came in, dry and smelling of leaves. My phone lit up on the passenger seat, my father. Drive safe. Let me know when you're home. I typed back. Okay. I pulled into my parking spot just before 10. Took off my jacket at the door, kicked off my shoes, and caught sight of the pothos on the balcony, its leaves trembling lightly in the night breeze, touched silver by the moonlight. I went out and watered it. That night, brushing my teeth in the bathroom mirror, I looked at my face. The nasolabial folds were still there. Tiny lines had started to gather at the corners of my eyes. But the expression was different. Before, when I looked in the mirror, my brow would be slightly furrowed, my mouth pulled down at the corners, bracing for whatever came next. Now the face looking back at me was relaxed.
Eyes bright.
Mouth neutral. No forced smile. No unconscious tension. I put my toothbrush back, patted my face dry, and turned off the light. And the days kept moving. December in Seattle brought rain. A solid week of it nonstop. That damp, bone-deep cold that seeps into everything. People on the streets bundled in heavy coats, ducking their heads against the drizzle. I turned up the heat in my apartment a few degrees and bought a thick throw blanket for curling up on the couch. My mother's leg healed faster than I'd expected. By mid-December, my father texted that she was walking short distances with a cane. I didn't go visit, but I sent a box of nutritional supplements and a pair of slip-resistant slippers the doctor had recommended. She texted when she got them. Received. Thank you, sweetheart. We still didn't talk much, but she no longer called like she used to. Just an occasional message. Have you eaten? Wear more layers, it's cold. Short lines, sent without expecting an immediate reply. It took some time for both of us to adjust to the new distance, but eventually we did. I didn't ask about Kevin, but my father mentioned once, almost offhand, that he was doing okay with the long-haul driving, had saved enough to rent a small place in Portland. He'd met a nurse, someone solid, they were dating. I said, that's nice, and changed the subject. Not out of resentment. He just wasn't part of my life anymore.
He had his path.
I had mine. We could both go our separate ways. And then it was the end of the year. The firm held its annual Christmas party at a rented venue downtown. Buffet, beer, gift exchange, raffle. People got drunk and rowdy. One junior associate took a ream of printer paper and used it as a makeshift microphone to belt out a carol so off-key it circled back around to entertaining. I stood in the corner with a mug of mulled wine, watching the chaos. Mr. Rodriguez walked over with a plate of cookies and stood beside me. Good year, he said. Thanks. Next fiscal year, I'm putting you up for promotion. I've already started the conversation with the partners. Be ready. I turned to look at him, surprised. The normal timeline from senior to manager was at least 3 to 4 years. I'd only been senior for 2. Why are you looking at me like that? He crunched a cookie. Your work speaks for itself. The big projects this year, you led all of them, client feedback was excellent. You've earned it. The firm isn't a charity, but it's not an idiot either. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Your smile looks a lot better than last year's. He clapped my shoulder and went off to harass the junior with the printer paper microphone. I carried my mulled wine over to the window. Below, Seattle's December skyline glittered with holiday lights, and in the distance, the Space Needle's tip glowed a steady red. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A photo from my mother. The living room at their house. Christmas tree, all decked out with ornaments and lights. A pile of colorfully wrapped presents underneath. The photo was a little blurry, probably handshake. Below it, a line of text. We got one for you too. Come pick it up whenever you can. I zoomed in on the photo. In the corner of the tree, there was a red and green striped box with a gold bow. Very visible. I backed out and typed 2 words. Will do. Then I put the phone away and looked back out the window. The lights were still there. The Space Needle's red glow still pulsed on and off. Steam from the mulled wine rose from the rim of my cup and condensed into a thin film on the cold glass. In the reflection, I could just make out my own shape. The corners of my mouth were turned up. It was the first New Year's Eve in 31 years that I'd been smiling.